All right.
Okay, so thanks everyone for coming today. We're going to go ahead and ask Shelby to read the roll so we can take attendance.
All right. Brandon Alfrey. Ron Anthony. Julia Pella.
Here.
Kim Britt. Molly Bruner.
Here.
Tia Caldwell. Becky Bales Kremlin.
Here.
Kevin Glass.
Here.
Tracy Green.
Here.
Nicholas Henderson. Jake McClellan.
Here.
Kelly Mitchell.
Here.
Kurt Mortensen.
Here.
Rebecca Muscat.
Here.
John Green. Jonathan Shiro.
Here.
Barb Weckman Brecky.
Here. And I just want to say I'm sorry. I'll be here for the first hour, and then after that, I might be in and out. So my apologies.
Good to know. Thank you.
And then it looks like Don had put a NA from Mike Schomer for today.
Right.
Yeah, so that's it. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, sorry.
You can.
10? Okay, so with 10, we do have a quorum. Yay. So that means the next item on the agenda is approval of the draft meeting agenda. And we also have, right after that, approval of the meeting minutes from November 4th and November 15th. And I'm wondering if I can twist your arm to make that one motion instead of two. Unless there's any.
If there's no corrections, I would make a motion to approve the agenda as prepared, and also for the meeting minutes from the November 4th and November 15th meeting.
Okay, so Kurt Mortensen makes that motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Julia Tellis seconds. Any discussion or any corrections needed on the minutes? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and.
All right, Julia Tella.
Yay. Or yeah, sorry, yay.
Molly Bruner. Sorry, but then you got me going here. This is the easy part, right? Yeah. Aye. Becky Bales Kremlin.
Aye.
Kevin Glass.
Aye.
Tracy Green.
Aye.
Jake McClellan.
Aye.
Kelly Mitchell.
Yes.
Kurt Mortensen.
Aye.
Rebecca Muscat.
Aye.
Jonathan Shiro.
Aye.
Barb Weckman Brecky.
Aye.
And with that, that's everyone. Unanimous.
Okay, so with that, the motion is approved unanimously. I actually I'm going to deviate from the agenda you just approved because as she was calling off names, I realized I made a big error in that we do have a new member today. And so I want to give an opportunity for her to introduce herself. So Tracy Green is now taking over for the position that Mike Schomer held. So Tracy, would you mind saying hello and telling us a little bit about yourself?
Good morning. I'm Tracy Green. I am the probation director for Wabasha County. I am here representing MACPO and CPO counties. I've been the director here in Wabasha County for 17 years and have been in various different agencies around the state and have been proudly in corrections 34 years. So glad to be here.
We're very glad to have you as well, and it's only fair that we tell you who we are. So I think we have to, let's just real quick go around. I'll start. Tracy, very nice to meet you. I know I've met you. I've been to the MACPO meeting, so I know I've met you. But very nice to see you. I'm Kelly Mitchell. I'm Assistant Commissioner of the Community Services and Reentry for DOC. And for some reason, I can't get that title like the last couple of days. I'm not able to say it. Anyway, Molly?
Go ahead. Hi, Tracy. Molly Bruner, Director of Scott County Community Corrections, co-chair of CSEC as a result of being the current president of MACAC.
Good morning, everyone. Good to see you, Tracy. I've had the privilege of working with Tracy for quite a few years. Becky Bales with Stearns County. I'm also representing MACAC as the past president.
Good morning, Kurt Mortensen, Otter Tail County Commissioner, here representing the Association of Minnesota Counties.
Jake?
Hey Tracy, Jake McClellan, Regional Manager North for the Department of Corrections. I know we work together, CSTS exec and other things.
Becca? Sorry, I didn't mean to get you off. Becca?
I'm Becca Muscat. I work for the Minnesota Alliance on Crime. We work with victim advocates, so I'm representing the victim perspective.
Barb?
Tracy, Barb Weckman Brecky, Scott County Commissioner, and we're a community corrections county. Welcome.
John, you probably know each other, but you might as well just say it.
Yes, John Shiro, Waseca County Court Services Director, CPO rep. Hey, Tracy, and welcome.
Julie?
Hi, Tracy. I'm Julie Atella. I work at Wilder Research, and I am representing the community research spot.
And Kevin?
Good morning, everybody. Kevin Glass, Itasca County Probation Director, here representing the evidence-based practice statewide advisory committee as the chair.
All right, and then Jen, I'll have you introduce yourself too, if you wouldn't mind.
Jennifer Casella, Deputy Program Director with the Council of State Governments Justice Center. So happy to be with you today. I don't know that Erin is online. She is currently at an airport and awaiting another flight. And I'm not sure that Sephra is online. She had a big travel day yesterday, getting back. So wish we were there in person. Sorry for the chaos on our end. So appreciate y'all.
All right, well, thank you. Thanks, everyone. The next item on our agenda is a subaward discussion. Jen, do you want me to take that, or do you want to talk about that for right now?
You can go ahead. I know I just got the notes that Erin sent over to you probably like 2 minutes before the call. So I think you've had them a little bit longer. So feel free. I'm happy to chime them in if there's any clarification needed on our end.
Thank you. Okay, so just we were hoping this would be a little different update today. So a couple of things. Number one, we did get the subaward. We were notified right before the holidays that that the subaward has been approved. And just as a reminder, the subaward was going to fund the LSCMI validation and the some of the changes to STI or CSTS to facilitate the case planning changes that we had recommended. So that was approved. We were moving to put the subaward contracts in place. CSG first had to get their contract in place with BJA, and then we needed to get our contract in place with CSG once that happens. And then a notice came down from the federal government that all grant funding was on hold. So we're kind of in a holding pattern right now to figure out if that's going to affect this or not, and what our next steps are. So the CSG is going to tell us what they can as they can, but right now we don't have a firm understanding of what the impact of that decision might be. Does that sound accurate, Jen? Anything I missed there?
Yeah, completely accurate. We'll definitely share updates as soon as we have them. I know with everything that came out with OMB yesterday, it had us putting together work stoppage plans yesterday because of the restriction of federal funds. We haven't gotten official guidance from the Department of Justice yet or BJA, so we're still waiting on official guidance on the status of things. So we are here today. They're having us still do all the work today and not do the work stoppage, but we're still waiting for more guidance on what's happening on that end. And they've kind of frozen and put on pause the sub-award stuff in the meantime while they wait for further guidance.
Any questions or anyone? Thanks, Jen. I appreciate that. All right. Next item on the agenda is workload study update.
Well, I will first acknowledge those who were on the workload study RFP review committee: Julia Tella, Annette Buskovic from Hudson County, Tammy Lieber, Candy Ojai County, John Shiro, Wasika County, Matt Cook with AMC, and myself. And so we are working with Dan Tron, who is our program director with DOC, who's kind of acting as kind of the liaison for our professional technical contract folks. So Dan helped us with all of the kind of how do you review an RFP, how do you score it, and so he's collecting all that and applying the cost points. So we met on January 13th, to have our initial review of the RFP. And then we had some follow-up questions that we submitted to the respondents. And so on the 23rd, we met again. We kind of went through our final scoring. And then this Monday, the 27th, was our deadline to submit our scoring sheets, and in which time Dan will apply the cost. So we are not privy to the cost of those RFPs. So Dan applies the cost score to the RFPs, and that will be, we should have those final scores ready to our PT folks here soon. And then from there, it goes to executive folks that take that next step. So
The ones that figure out how to pay for it.
the ones that figure out how to pay for it. So I just want to acknowledge, thank you to Julie, Danette, Tammy, Joe, John, and Matt for helping out, and Dan Tron for being a part of that. And so I thought we had a fantastic discussion looking at the respondents, and kind of it really kind of really lifted us up and saw a future of what we really could get out of workload study. So we're just kind of really anxious to move this along.
Any questions for Jake on that? Thanks for leading that effort. I'm really excited to see where we land. It sounds like you're pretty pleased with the proposals that we've gotten. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, I think, the respondents that we saw, I mean, any one of them can pull it off. But, there are some that stand above the others. And so, yeah, again, we're very excited to move this along.
awesome. Okay, next item on the agenda is JRI phase 2 update. And I think I maybe forgot to mention that, Aaron, the whole CSG team, as yesterday had been told that they couldn't be here today. And then today they were told that they can be here today. So there's, so Erin is sort of in transit. That's why she's not online right now. Probably the same with Sephra. And so they were going to give the JRI2 updates. I don't have the notes on that. Do you have the notes on that one, Jen? I just wasn't sure.
Let me look, because Aaron's email came through without the attachments.
Oh.
Let me see if I can find real quick. Are we able to do the next update and then come back to it?
Yeah, do you want to do the risk and needs update? Or is that you?
Yeah, I can definitely. So the Risk and Need Assessment Committee has been meeting monthly and looking at validation, not only with the LSCMI, but looking at potentially a pre-screener because we know that there's a decent cost with the use of the screener that comes with the LSCMI. So looking at the viability of creating a Minnesota specific screener, either through the vendor who's potentially doing the validation of the LSCMI, or potentially through kind of an internal Minnesota working group. So they're currently exploring both of those options and kind of what the cost and resources might be in terms of a pre-screener and kind of what that would look like for a statewide screener. So they are currently working through that in order to bring kind of a firm recommendation to CSAC, and also kind of working toward potentially some recommendations on offense specific and gender responsive assessments, and kind of parameters around those that agencies can follow, and potentially a list of kind of approved assessments on that front for agencies to use. So looking through and working on developing those to ensure that there's kind of consistency and cohesiveness and high quality offense specific assessments and use across the state. So
Any questions on that?
those are the major updates. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then don't worry about the other one. Jen, there's a couple of us who have been on the JRI2 group. I know that most recently when we met, we really spent a lot of time going through the response to the CSAC report, and just trying to tease out like how that intersected with the work that that group was already continuing to do. One of those things being the behavior response group. So trying to start to think about what the full universe of things was. And I think that they hadn't gotten very far on just sort of reprioritizing their work following that. And if there's anyone who's on that group who's here today who has anything to add, that would be awesome. No? Okay, it's fine. We can get a more robust update next time. And in fact, one of the things that we'll want to talk about before we leave today is how we want updates from these groups again. We want to confirm the process for moving forward with that. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is actually reviewing DOC Commissioner's response to the CSAC report. So I'm going to share my screen and Molly is going to take over.
All right. So the way we thought about working through this is I'm going to walk through high level the CSAC recommendations, what we recommended to the commissioner, and then again, high level commissioner response. Where was there agreement? Where was there maybe agreement plus or against some of those things, so that we can, at a high level, again, look at that. And then what we're going to do is go into breakout sessions. Those in person here will chat. We can break the group up online, maybe into two. And talk for about 10 minutes on initial reactions to the responses, what stood out for you, what's good, and what concerns do you have. Then we're going to come back as a group and we're going to go into a deeper dive, kind of line by line, and really capture maybe some of the specifics, related to each of those things. So high level first, and then we'll take a deeper dive as part 2 of this process. Questions or concerns about that process? Then we will go through, whether it's in there too. Yeah, I got it. Okay, good. So that first deliverable was really around statewide supervision standards and definitions. So this is where the discussion around ISR transformation and the IPV, the interpersonal violence reunification principles were discussed. And Commissioner's response was, again, in alignment with us, and to develop a comprehensive outline as we go forward on what that looks like.
Molly?
That's a little different. It's just for those top 2, it's yes, develop policy for the 2 things we recommended policy for. And the additional deliverable there was actually to develop an outline of all of the supervision standards that we would eventually be trying to create. That's what that means.
Thank you for the clarification. And by all means, this is a lot that we're consuming, so if you have the things to add or you're part of those committees, I would appreciate that as well, so thank you. Oh, Kevin, go
Did you
ahead.
see the chat?
No, I cannot see chat.
Get that pulled up here.
Okay, go ahead though, is that you?
Barb said she lost audio, not sure if just me.
Oh. So you can hear us, Kevin? Okay. Huh. Anybody else, like John Shiro, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. Then I don't know, yeah. Might be accurate, yeah. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything we can do, right, so I'm just, sorry, Barb, well, if you can't hear me, then I'm talking to no one at the moment. Yeah, that could be like if you can send a direct chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
She said we'll try to reconnect, sorry.
All right, sounds good. Okay, deliverable 2 was the work around risk and needs assessment tools. So again, adopting the LSCMI as the primary general risk agreement there from the commissioner. The one additional thing that the commissioner would like to have this group look at is the MnSTAR 3.0 and how we might, the language is to study and make recommendations for how we might integrate that into initial assignment and supervision level for case planning when folks leave the institution. The second was around the pre-screener that was discussed around those, again, not using, most likely using that LSCMI version based on cost. So he's in agreement. Yes, please develop a policy around this and provide additional recommendations to clarify appropriate supervision standards for misdemeanor cases that are not under that targeted misdemeanor bucket. And so what does that look like? We said we'd like to continue to work on identifying that's still the same pre-screener stuff. So he's in agreement there. Those supplemental tools such as for sex offenders and DWI cases, agreed that we need to keep looking at that. And the validation piece is that he also agrees that that needs to continue to be done and that it will be managed by the DOC in collaboration with impacted agencies. I'm going to keep moving unless somebody wants me to clarify or add anything just from, again, that overview. So deliverable 3 was around the assessment-driven collaborative case planning. So we suggested that we're following an evidence-based process for case planning. And he agrees, develop a policy. This is the addition, was to also include moderate risk folks into the policy. And specifically, he talked about having a 2-year delay post-implementation of when we do this for high risk. And that a year in, we would do like an updated progress report of where we're at with including moderate risk in our case planning process and policy. The second thing is that we did suggest that we're using that automated case plan in CSTS. And he agreed, yes, please develop a policy. And then establishing a formalized evidence-based case planning process that aligns with our risk need responsivity model also agrees that please develop a policy on that and to prioritize the development of metrics to assess the fidelity and associated outcomes of case planning. Moving to deliverable 5, we talked about, the gender responsive, culturally appropriate and trauma-informed services. We definitely saw that as something we wanted to continue working towards. We do have a date that was thrown out there of July 1st of this year. He agrees that that's a good idea. The next was around the statewide incentive and sanctions grid. Again, this was something that wasn't quite complete, so it was that we wanted to continue to work on that. Also with the July 1st, 2025 suggested due date, and he agreed as well. And the last one there was around shifting the language from incentive and sanctions grid. And we realized that might be, or it would need to be a statutory language change to our evidence-based language that better captures what we're trying to accomplish there, which is the behavior response grid. And he agrees with the language change, even if it's not changed in statute, and asks us to please use this language in our recommendations moving forward. Deliverable 7, it was performance indicators for supervision. And this is recommended on how to achieve these legislative requested metrics. And so the DOC is already taking steps to produce the first report based on the metrics outlined in statute and the recommendations that were submitted. And in deliverable 8 was around quality assurance, training and coaching. So this one was really that all of our agencies need to develop training, coaching, and QA of the 5 big buckets of evidence-based skills, which are described there on the screen. And again, agreement on developing a policy related to this. That we require, or we suggested that we follow systemic requirements of reporting these through our comprehensive plans. That we need to ensure that people have completed that initial training around EBP and ongoing training of 16 hours per year. And again, agreement with that recommendation and to develop policy. Then there was our recommendation to seek legislative change around the language from a singular person that's responsible, overseen by an evidence-based practice coordinator, to really being advised by the EBP statewide advisory committee. And so the commissioner agreed, once again, even if not change in legislation, to shift this in operational practice and use this, this recommendation moving forward. Deliverable 10 is the plan to eliminate financial penalty for early discharge. So we request that researchers that are doing that workload study, which I know is in the RFP and was part of what was analyzed. That's correct, right, Jake? Wasn't it? Yeah. So we're, I mean, it was all already baked in. Oh, you gave me a look. I'm like, oh, did I get that wrong? I'm like, I really missed something. That's okay. That's okay. And so he agrees that that's, you know, the plan in place is a good one there. And then we have deliverable 11A and B. And 11A is around this Community Supervision Advisory Board. The expansion and revision of the membership, he does agree, but it would require that legislative change. So recommends that we provide or help provide the language perhaps around that change. Same thing with the budget expansion. And then this collaborative decision-making and oversight is something that the commissioner did disagree with. Because of the DOC statutory requirements, what, you know, where the authority lands at the end of the day, that the oversight and the responsibilities and authority does land with the Commissioner of Corrections. However, is still very committed to the collaborative process and will submit CSAC recommendations to the legislature. I captured that right. And then the last one there is around reviewing and reassessing the workload study, which again, we're continuing. Jake already gave an update of that, and we'll be moving that forward. And again, agrees. And at this time, the DOC is committed to funding that workload study. From a high level, anything that I missed in the overview?
I don't think so. The one thing I just wanted to say to folks that, because I don't know if we've communicated or not, and I apologize if we didn't, but both the CSAC report and the commissioner's response have been filed with the legislature. So they got those like same time you got all of it as well. So just wanted to let you know that has gone through.
Okay, thank you. So what we're gonna do is take 10 minutes or so to break into groups and have a discussion again to recap. If you would talk in your groups around what stood out for you in the response and kind of like the pros and cons. What did you like about it? What maybe do you still have concerns about? And then we'll come back and we'll go into a deeper dive on these particulars. Questions about that? All right. Are you good, Shelby? Or? Okay.
All you do is find a co-host. Okay. says. Oh, I just have to put myself in one and put Kelly in one.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
yes.
otherwise it says no one can talk. So Kelly, I'm gonna put you in one and make you a co-host.
As long as you're muted.
Did you tell them the question?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
Oh, it's like totally hot.
Yeah, it's good.
Oh, I'm good, sorry. That's
Strong.
what I meant,
Yeah.
Oh, you don't
I'll
need
be
that.
awake today.
It might beat the,
I love the down.
it's okay.
I-
It was handy.
Yeah, it's handy, it's
Yeah, this is,
fast. This is stronger.
Yeah, it needs-
That's in my head.
Yes.
We were talking about coffee earlier.
I
You need
appreciate you
help, Shelby? Or you
making.
got it?
No, I got
Okay,
it.
Okay.
Do I actually have to join?
Yeah.
Just join and then mute yourself.
I'll mute the computer
Tracy
so I
needs to
can't-
get into a room too.
Just as the whole thing muted, you know what I mean? So it's not coming through your speaker. Yeah, you're good.
I
You'll
don't
know
think
this.
Tracy's in a room. Is Tracy in a room? I don't know, cause she's.
Tracy, if you can hear us, you'll have to, if there's a little thing that pops up for you, you'll have to join it.
Yeah, because she's assigned a session too. She has to approve to go in it. So
Yeah.
She might not be at it.
Because she's, yeah.
She might have stepped away.
But sometimes you can also, like, if she's not highlighted, you could move her to a different room, but,
She's not in it.
right, she's not in it, so.
Julia Tisella, Julia Tella is all by herself, like Jen Tisella's in there.
Oh, yeah, move, like, so go up to like John Sherrill and hit move to room 2, and then at least we have.
So he might be in mid-sentence, but.
Yeah,
nice.
That's why I picked him, because I'm like,
Yes.
if anybody that's, I'm gonna like,
We like to get John.
he's a co-host, co-chair, so
Yeah.
he gets the front of it, I guess.
That's what he gets for not being here.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
Is that gonna go to them?
PJ, can I steal the donut?
These are for everybody. Absolutely. Oh, yeah. The donuts.
Do you have the room muted, or will Tracy be able to hear us if she comes back?
I'll mute it.
Well, I was thinking it'd be beneficial if she could hear us, because we can tell her to click on the.
Oh, yeah, then I will mute it.
Yeah.
So she can hear you if she comes back.
All right, everyone, so what stood out for you in this response? And this, does somebody mind taking our notes to report back a little bit?
Okay.
Thanks, Tracy. You had some paper in front of you, I was kind of hoping that. Yeah, what stood out to you?
For-
Yeah.
For someone who doesn't work in this area and doesn't have the experience, I mean, my initial impression was strong alignment with
Yeah.
the recommendations, with some suggestions and slight modifications, but I don't know if that was the perception of others, so throw that out for discussion.
No, I appreciate that, especially from the outside, because it always is like you're so deep in all of this stuff, so what does it look like when you're kind of freshly reading it and don't
Right.
do that? Yeah, speaking for.
I think, I completely agree with you. I think that's one of the things, and we've been at this a long time and many years, and I feel like our 3 delivery systems are very close together. So I think that's a great observation.
I would say the same thing. I would say that it just shows how well we have been working together and talking about all these evidence-based practices for so long, is the fact that the majority of it was yes, and, in support, almost for whatever it is, 80% of the
Right.
things that are there. And so I think that overall that was a great thing to say for sure. Yeah.
DOC,
And you are the
disagree or?
DOC, so-
It's kind of hard to be like, I don't disagree with anything he did. No.
Yeah.
Well, right, that's true.
Yeah, are we being recorded on the breakout session?
I don't think so, no.
Just
Well
kidding.
then.
Yeah, exactly.
I think there are some opportunities here too, to have further discussion, because I think when it comes to actually implementing, that's where when I'm thinking of the weight I'm carrying is not just for Stearns County, it's for the entire state and it's for all of the community corrections counties. That's where I want to put some more thought into it, because when it gets to actually doing all of these things, I want us to give ourselves some grace, because I don't want to have a failure. And then we'll look at that, the recommendations didn't work. So that's just some of the thoughts I have, is to have maybe a real planful and go at it maybe slowly and have some successes. And because this is new for the whole state to be moving this much in unison, that I'm excited about it, but I just want to be real thoughtful about it. That's my thought.
Well, and I'll be honest, like, once we put the list together of like the work that still needs to be done, I found it really overwhelming.
Yes, thank you.
And so I'm trying to think about, I'm trying to roll it up, right? So it's really like, all we're trying to do is put risk, needs, and responsivity into policy and action and do it all together. So it's like, how can we roll it up so that it's
Sorry, real quick.
chunks that we.
Tracy's on. Tracy, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Sorry, I got kicked out. I don't know if everybody did.
Is she bold now, or you can click on her and?
Move her into a room.
Yeah,
try to
we'll move you
move
into a room here, Tracy.
Okay.
Thank
Okay,
you for
so yeah,
speaking
she's
up.
bolded, you should be able to just pick a room.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep, and so there should be a thing that flashes, and you can click join here in a minute. I forget exactly what it says.
It says she can't.
She can.
She could be in our, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You can be in our group.
you're in our group.
you're here. So we were just talking about an.
Oh, she froze.
Darn it.
She's not able to join.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No,
I
it's
was,
totally
I wanted to, it's always awkward online, so.
Mhm.
Okay.
I tried to send her to 2 again and it went to like that grayed out writing. So then I brought her back and she could see her again and then.
I've never had that happen.
Mhm.
You know, this, maybe it's group 2. Just kidding.
They seem to be okay otherwise, Kelly, right? Are they?
Yeah, they are talking and stuff, yeah.
Okay, so is group 1, so.
Well, when she comes back, yeah, she can join our group. So I'm with you, Kelly, overwhelmed and like, just trying to roll it up to a higher level and all the things that are to do.
No, and that's what I was thinking, because it's like, that also starts to me to think like, what's the order that we tackle
Mhm.
things in, right?
Yes.
Like, because we can get risk assessment down and we can get
Yes.
case planning down.
Yes.
It's like you kind of have to get
Totally agree.
the steps in order, and so how do we tackle that and move through it in a way that makes sense, that we can all handle? But it's, like, we don't want to undersell too, like how much progress we made on agreeing on those things.
Right.
Too, 'cause that's huge. Till the LC, comes back and what's everything. I'm just kidding.
A lot of moving parts, though.
Yeah,
There really
there's a lot of
are.
moving
That's,
parts,
it's hard to track.
Well, I've got MRA also happening.
Yes.
Yes.
Along with this process, which, again, fits the R&R bucket. We've been working on, as we develop policies, we're developing our policies, it's R&R, we're making sure R&R, the case planning process is embedded there. So I think it's starting to kind of, the pieces are falling. It's just how fast they start falling. I think that's part of what you're seeing, Becky, is the thoughtfulness, understanding, it's part of capacity, it's part of, it's the adaptive change as well for our staff. That's a big part of, I think, all along this way is how do we have that implementation conversation too, where people kind of, are I don't know how like accepting and understanding of the process, but at the same time it's paced in a way that, now we can shift and we can keep adding more into this, because it's gonna just seem like but as the pieces fall, we feel like we're in a good implementation phase and a spot in our lives that they can come in at that paced level and start building upon where we want it to be. But I think that's what we have to figure out. What do we tackle first, and how big is that piece? How big is that? And then from what is the EVP advisory and pushing and talking about implementation process and plans, assisting one another with that as well. I think that's a big piece, is that because we are in a community, so we are aligned, we can all work together and assist one another with doing that. Hey, here's the roadmap. Yeah, if you want it, we can work more closely together on that, or the 10 steps to risk reduction. We can work closely on that too. So as we look at things, we're looking at it from the ability ability to customize things yourself. So like we talked about the case planning module with CSTS, how can we customize that so it works for you? But it meets exactly what we're trying to accomplish here. With, these deliverables.
I think that is what, and we've talked about it here before, but that the difference between, again, that setting policy and then what, because we are in a state that we get to choose delivery systems and there is nuances to our jurisdictions, right? And that autonomy that exists. And we want equitable access to resources and approach and probation
30
regardless. 30 seconds left. You know, whether you're in whatever district that you're in, right? Like that you have the same shot at getting better and healthy and whatever that means, right? And we know that that's best sought if we follow our best practices. We want enough flexibility though, that we're not overly prescriptive, that if things change, like the example I used yesterday was we moved from the LSIR to the LSCMI because mental health used to be a criminogenic need and drive criminal behavior as it was researched and thought. Now it is not. It's a responsivity consideration so we need to be able to have enough like flexibility, especially so we're, you know, we can shift our operating procedures as things shift, but still have those policy guidelines that have, right, like the rudder is essentially to like keep us going in the same direction. And so that's always the balance when you're trying to, I think, get, you know, a state like ours aligned in this way. But I overall, I think that we're definitely heading in the right direction. So. All right. Thank you. I don't know about those in break. Sorry, there's a couple breakout sessions, and John Shiro, I kind of distract you from one room to another. So thank you for my assumed flexibility that I know you have on that one. Anyways, I would love to hear some takeaways from each of the groups. And so there's 2 groups online. I don't know if you would please share, I guess, what you discussed. I don't know if you remember what groups it was 1 and 2, but group 1, who is that? Shelby, was Barb, Commissioner Ruckman-Brecky.
Yeah, let me get.
And folks, you know who you are then. Somebody.
Breakout session 1 was Barb Ruckman-Brecky, Becca Muscat, and Kevin Glass.
What did you chat about?
I vote that Kevin speaks for us. He did a great job summing it up.
I love it.
All right.
All right, you might hear my dog in the background. He's rolling around on the ground and he likes to make noise. So, yeah. So for the most part, I agree with the commissioner's recommendations. They sound pretty good and fair. The only thing I would say that I disagreed with or had concerns about.
Your dog is super funny. Sorry, that's awesome.
Commissioner Ruckman-Brecky, that was a setup. I'm sorry, Kevin. Oh, you gotta laugh once in a while.
I apologize.
It sounds like me during the NFL draft.
So the only area was he disagreed with our recommendations about having a voice or another voice if we disagree with the commissioner's response. And for supervised release and commits the commissioner corrections, absolutely he has 100% authority per statute. That's outlined. I don't think anybody's questioning that. It's the ones where maybe we make recommendations on in the community, ordered by the bench, but ordered by the judges in the community on probation. I guess I would disagree with him having the authority on that part where it should be. I think this group should be able to make recommendations, and if we are in disagreement with the commissioner, that we have an avenue or voice outside of that. But overall, it was good. I think we were well supported in his recommendations, and so I thought that was I appreciated that as well. Others?
Group 1, yeah. Anybody else from group 1? Hearing none. Thank you, Kevin. How about group 2?
I can take that if you want, if that's all right. So, similar comments in the sense that it was a well-written report. Some great feedback from the commissioner. I thought it was very thoughtful and in the responses he had and well written. Overall, as Kevin mentioned, I mean, the recommendations were aligned for the most part with what we had. I think just a general comment we had, and that was at our fault with CSAC, I think, because some of those timelines, as you look at them now, are very tight. So we're going to have another busy year. But we set some of those timelines on ourselves, I think, last year as we were moving through. But it's going to be another busy year. We did have that conversation like Kevin did as well. I was in that group and he was talking about that. Then I got shifted to this group. So we did just have that general conversation on, hey, maybe that's one that we could have additional as CSAC, at least some additional conversations on the one with CSAC and have an additional voice. But I will appreciate the commissioner said there a number of times that he still wants that collaborative effort with some policy decisions and recommendations. So, but Julie or Jennifer, did I miss anything?
No, I think you nailed it.
Great, thanks, John. All right, yeah, go ahead, Jake, thanks.
Yeah, so our group just kind of really recognized the strong alignment that we have within our three systems and appreciate the commissioner's suggestions, modifications, kind of that yes and support from the commissioner. And I think we kind of looked at, as we look kind of forward focus with these recommendations that, making sure we're giving ourselves some grace and being thoughtful about how this process is going to be laid out and moving forward, going at it slowly and not overwhelming ourselves, looking at, how implementation, adaptive changes and shifting, shifting mindsets towards, alignment with this, ensuring that we have the ability to be flexible, not overly prescriptive as we write these policies and, because we know that they're going to follow best practices and shift these operating procedures.
Thank you. Anybody else over in our space here that want to add to what Jake had to say? No? All right. Well, thank you all for that. So I'll now kick it over to Kelly. We're going to go through these in more detail. So if you have specifics, or again, we want to have like a deeper conversation on any of these, that we will have that now. So.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. And we're going to walk through each of the deliverables in more detail. And part of the goal of walking through this time will be, why can't I get on? Sorry.
Up there it looks good.
Does it? But like it's cutting off on the left. Oh. And like my bar is over as far as it can go. Let me stop sharing for a sec. So give me a sec. I'm gonna stop sharing and try this again. Okay.
And then hang on a quick sec. Does it say anything about the entire screen?
Molly is our in-house technology person.
Mhm.
This is good to know. Well done.
I don't think that works. So do this again.
Are there any frozen panes on the spreadsheet?
I think we got
We
it.
got it.
Okay.
No.
We got it.
Oh,
Okay, so as we walk through them again this time, we're gonna also try to think about a couple of different things. First of all, we want to, one of our goals will be to talk about who might be the group that could help us work on this thing. So that's the far end, the work group committee, and I can fill some stuff in as we go. We can talk about any specific feedback that people had to any of the responses that the commissioner had in this area, or are there things that like, does this work? Do we have concerns with this particular thing? Is there anything that we have to do to rethink timelines? Basically, the goal today is just to get like as much information out on the table as we can so that we can start to try to build a work plan and set some priorities. Like, I think one of the things that our planning committee recognized when we were looking at all of the responses was that there's a lot, it's somewhat overwhelming. And we may have shot ourselves in the foot with even some of the timelines we recommended. So we, now would be the time to start to think about which things need to come first. Not that we're going to solve that today. We're just getting everything out on the table so that we have the information to try to solve that. And I would imagine we'll be coming back to this again in February with more detail. So that's the goal. All right, so deliverable one, again, looking at the statewide supervision standards and definitions, that's what we were originally asked to do. The first two, I think, are fairly simple. First one there is develop policy for implementation of intensive supervisor lease transformation. Jake, I think you're already working on this.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think we have a draft policy working with Becky and Nikki Niles with Dodge Olmsted. So I think what we're just in a pause right now with the MRRA language and making sure as that is being worked through, how do we weave in any MRRA language that needs to be implemented in that policy. At that point, we should be ready to provide it to this group.
And so just to point out, there's also an MRRA column here. So as you know, this is the year MRRA will begin to get rolled out. We will I think we should probably spend some time at CSAC at a future meeting going through the policies that have been recommended. We're really close to putting policies out. So we'll make sure you understand those. But when it's marked a yes in the MRA column, that was a guess at whether there was an intersection. And ISR is definitely an intersection because there's possibility for someone to earn supervision abatement once they're on ISR. I need to take one step back too and say that he won't be able to hear us, but he'll hear this on the recording. Don Click put this together.
Yeah. Yes.
It's amazing.
It's really, really
See
impressive.
everyone.
Yeah.
So I just want to give him kudos because this is very organized. He really literally went through the CSAC response and pulled out everything so that we would have it all in one place.
Yeah, thank you, Don.
Anything else about ISR transformation? The next one is to develop policy to implement interpersonal violence reunification principles. That was brought to us by the Domestic Violence Steering Committee. So one assumption that we made in putting this together was that we could send it back to the Domestic Violence Steering Committee to ask them to develop that policy. Any input or discussion there?
I would like to give a little, and sorry, I'm new to this, so if you've addressed these issues already, I apologize, but I am on the Domestic Violence Steering Committee, have been since its implementation. And it was my understanding, or it was the IPV policy or implement reunification principles were created by the Department of Corrections and sent to all of the delivery systems. So I, on that committee, brought that back to MACPO, I think 3 years ago. I could go back and get date for sure, but I want to say 2021. And said, hey, all delivery systems, this is a DOC policy we want to implement. Can you get your feedback? And I know I brought feedback back from MACPO on 2 separate occasions of some ways to improve it. And there were some modifications done through the Domestic Violence Steering Committee, but I was under the impression that this is already in policy.
It's not policy. And that process, so there are a couple things that had started before CSAC came into existence. ISR transformation was one of them. This was the other one. And because CSAC has this role in determining which policies will be, should be statewide, we, asked them both to come through CSAC so that we could determine if this should be something that every delivery system does. So it's not currently in policy, and it's the reunification principles are definitely out there, but there's no policy requiring their use right now.
It's like the best practices guideline
Right.
at this point.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So now it's using those and creating a policy around them.
Correct.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Do you think that's something that the Domestic Violence Steering Committee would be able to help with, Tracy? I know you can't speak to them.
I mean, I've been on it long enough and active with it that I feel definitely that would be something that is appropriate for the steering committee. And we are actually had a small subcommittee and started talking, and we are talking about what our goals or action plans should be for this upcoming year. And I think that would be a great task for us to work on.
Okay. Great, thanks for that feedback. Anything else on this one, the IPBs?
So like, as I'm thinking about this, obviously, like, it could be a standalone policy, but as I look at other policies, like the agent-centered release planning, it's gonna impact these other policies. I mean, is that inherent in that responsibility is to identify that group, to identify what other policies it may also connect with? I mean, or is that simply just a reference within, like, Carter kind of manages the interstate agents and release planning policy, the interstate transfer policy. I'm just thinking of where there's going to have these connections as well. So is that just within this group kind of, identifying that, or asking as they develop this policy? I'm just thinking ahead, like, there might be an existing policy already this could lead into. But yes, I mean, I support that group, but at the same time, like, I'm just trying to think of, like, making sure it's not missed, like, somewhere because, I didn't know that policy was there.
Yeah. I think we all support that, right? Anytime you can make it simplify, especially if things ever change with those reunification principles based on whatever we learn, right? As all of our EVPs evolve, like, connecting it, so then you're not, all those policies speak to it. Then if you make any adjustments, you're only making it on one space, right? And those things are good for all of us
Right.
in the state.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, sometimes they get lost.
Yep.
From a yes, these are the principles, but, thinking about, are there training standards that need to go along with these principles as well? Is that ensuring that, is this something that then connects with the EVP advisory, statewide training academy? So, I just kind of think, when I think about, here's the policy, how to do it, that's not a great implementation process.
Right.
It's then, I think, I think we can vet that out. I mean, I'm not putting it on one group or another, but I just wanted to speak out loud as we're talking about developing policy. How do we ensure it's understood as well?
I think that's a great point, Jake, because I think I foresee our committee making recommendations regarding training. As you know, there's statewide training going on right now. We started in fall of 2024, and I think they wrap up the current schedule in March or April of 2025. Then we're doing those in all the districts. My understanding is the DOC made that mandatory for agents. I strongly encouraged that all CPO directors make it mandatory for staff. But I think it's good to have kind of an expectation and a standard that how we train on it also, so that it's something we continue to address and there's just great tools in that training on how to work with all victims.
Right, and I think this even encompasses our case managers within our facilities as well. So I mean, I think it expands beyond the community supervision advisory, but also with tying in our facilities as well, which I think they are representative on the EV's committee. At least Liz is, I know, from the DOC specific.
Thank you. Those are all really great points, and I do think that it's also going to be incumbent on us at CSAC to, as policies come back through, to make those connections if they weren't made already. I think that's something that we're gonna have to really keep an eye on, especially the DOC members of CSAC, knowing what's there and what's not.
I will bring back this information back to our committee. I think we meet next week.
That'd be great. Thank you. Thank you, Tracy.
Would we provide like a formal request? I mean, or is it just shoot them an email and, hey, can you take this on? I don't know how, like with some of these groups, because I'm guessing EBB advisory is going to be, as we go down the road here, but is there going to be like a formal ask, or is it just going to be kind of like a informal saying, this is our recommendation, would you guys be going? If not, who would you suggest would be the best to support it? So what happens if they say no?
All great questions. I believe last year we sent a request. I remember having a meeting where we had the committees present to talk about whether they had capacity to work on those issues. But I think that was after we sent a request to see if they could. So we really do need to nail down our practice.
I like how some of the subcommittees have been doing that progress report back after they had said that they could work on those. So maybe our next meeting, and in the interim, we can figure out, is there just a formal kind of form? Here's what CSAC/commissioner, however the wording is, is asking, again, capacity back, and then we fit them into those progress report updates as we meet at CSAC. And if it's not them, then we just need to decide then who is it, because it still would be important to do, right? Is it a different subcommittee, or just we need to find people to do it as an example?
Yeah, because was our timeline September?
For that one?
Yeah.
I think that was also, I don't know about the IPD one.
Can it just be in our minutes that we recommend that this goes back to? And then knowing, for example, in this one, I'm on that committee, I'm happy to bring that information back. But just sharing the minutes, would that be sufficient?
I think Tracy, it is for maybe this example, but there could be other committees. The one that always jumps out to me is like our data committee that is on so many things that they might say, we're not saying, no, we're not willing to do this. We're saying we're drinking water from a fire hydrant and this timeline isn't going to work, kind of thing. So that's where we need some sort of like feedback loop, I think, created. So,
good point.
Yep.
Yeah, if the July 1st timeline doesn't work, what timeline does work?
Correct.
Take it on.
I also know we have our committee has a meeting with Carter Deers. I think it's February 24th. Just knowing that he's new to this, his position. So some of our committees, or some of us on the committee, were meeting with him just to introduce him to our process and get some feedback. So I don't know if that can be a process also.
Yeah, well, that's true. I think Tammy Jo and I met with the chair of the Domestic Violence Steering Committee last year. That's how we got them involved. So, yeah, I mean, that's also a possibility for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so then the one piece that we didn't put on the table, but the commissioner has asked for is for us to develop a comprehensive outline of and a proposed prioritization and timeline for the development of supervision standards, including a couple of things: identification of the essential components of effective community supervision, incorporating the policies that CSAC has already recommended, as well as clearly defined definitions of supervision levels based on relevant factors to ensure supervision is provided consistently across the state. So I interpret this to be really what is the full body of policies, of standards that we're working towards, not like do them right away, but just what's the end goal? What are we actually working towards? So feedback on this one.
I think we're and maybe I'm stating the obvious, I don't know, but like the chicken and the egg thing too, like we understand that this and if we need to spell that out a little bit more, fair enough, about what the end goal is, again, that visionary piece to it. And so much is going to be, we need the validation study, we need the workload, like the other things that have the timelines to them. So it does feel like it's the further out, it's the, you know, again, that end goal sort of thing versus, so when we get to prioritization in which order we do things, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It feels like it just, not because of importance, but it just belongs after we get more information. So you think about supervision levels and what we should be doing and all those sorts of things. Well, first we need the data to say what that is. And so for us, it's more about that, not like, you know, that we wouldn't be addressing this at some point in time.
And I think that fits within the timeline.
Right.
You know, it's like, that's, first and foremost, we need to have a standard cutoff based on the validation or whatever that ends up being. At the validation study, because yeah, you know, I think that makes a lot of sense as far as we need to know what that's going to be first. At the end of the day, I'm just trying to think, like, I think like definitions, like in the ISR policy, we define what intensive supervised release is. That's the level of supervision that gets provided. Then we go into, like, obviously because it's a special supervision, but then defining what high risk supervision is, medium risk, or low risk, or whatever that ends up being. But we need to know we need the validation study done before we.
Jacob, you're fading a little bit. When you're talking, we couldn't hear the.
Oh, sorry, I'm probably pointing the wrong direction, so I'll point towards the camera. So, yeah, I really, what I'm saying is, I agree with Molly.
Put that on the minutes, Don.
Wow, all these agreements, I love it.
Yes, that was, yeah, my roundabout way of saying, I agree with you, Molly. So, yes.
In other words, we can't do too much of this is where we're going if we don't have the data first. To know what it's gonna, I mean, what's to go first and where we're going.
It's ripe for too many changes.
Yes.
If we start defining it now and then the validation
Changes.
study. Yeah.
Yes.
And so that's gonna frustrate our staff.
Yes.
It's gonna create more confusion if we start down this path of defining before, you know, determining, you know, through the validation, risk assessment validation.
Are we able to do the broader outline though of what we think the supervision standards will cover without getting into those definitions yet? I guess that's the first thing that's on this list. So I'm just wondering, like, it feels like if we sort of know, hey, the goal is to get here and have standards on these areas or these topics, then everybody has a clearer sense of where we're going.
Yeah, I think, yes, I also think these same things fall in some of the other deliverables around like what should the case planning be? We need to do QA around MI and this and that, you know, when you start to get into like dosage in terms of the amount of time spent, let's say, or how many visits you do, or right, like the very technical things related to that. Again, I go to, we need, and then the workload study, we need to know what does it take to do these things, right? And then how much does it cost? Because it does get into capacity eventually, right? So I wouldn't want to set something to say, well, it should be 4 times a month, it should be weekly, it should be this, it should be that. And then come to find out, yeah, but in order to do that, you need this, and we're all still short. So I get a little nervous about like how
Right.
that works.
And maybe we're thinking about what an outline is differently.
Okay, so tell me.
Because an outline would be, well, are we gonna set contact standards? Like that would just be a line. Like, I don't even know if contact standards are one of the supervision standards that we would be aiming towards, right? So to me, that would just be contact standards for whatever, but no detail. It's just the outline of what topics do we need supervision standards for, because which things are required for supervision.
Well, that first one, you know, to me, that says, how are we going to implement effective supervision? How are we going to implement R&R? So how are we onboarding our staff based on the components of the effective, you know, EDP principles that should be trained? How are we assessing risk? How are we addressing the needs? And so on and so forth, the implementation of case planning. So I think, does it need to kind of follow that structure necessarily? Is like, you know, from an onboarding perspective to a discharging perspective of a client, what are we doing everywhere in between? To me, it doesn't need to necessarily say with high risk, we do this, with medium risk, we do that. I think that will kind of come with more of the validation piece to, do we venture down that path of minimum contact standards, et cetera. But I think from the component of effective supervision, how are we implementing R&R statewide? And how are we from onboarding to discharge, onboarding our staff to do the work, to how are we, going through the case planning process, et cetera? Does that make sense? Sorry, does that make sense? Is how are we implementing R&R from a policy perspective?
I guess I'm still struggling with how we do that, because my thinking over the years has been contact standards, but I'm looking at more as behavioral based supervision now.
Yeah, yeah.
So the grid of, if you're high risk and you're in violation, now you have more to do. If you're not in violation, you have less to do. So it can get so complicated so fast. So I don't even like the word maybe contact standards. That's
Right.
that's even kind of rubbing me a little bit wrong, but maybe we say, so it's hard for me to do the outline. We want behavioral based supervision. We want, but it's hard to define it.
Yes, and so everywhere in between in the R&R and how we kind of structure that, how are we using incentives and sanctions? How are we going to develop that process? And so what does that look like in an outline or a timeline? Is because we have that on our list, but all of those things kind of work together in that building block of effective supervision. How are we assessing their risk and needs, and how are we implementing, addressing behavior? How are we, and how are in that, how are we using incentives and sanctions or behavior modification grid? So that's where I'm thinking, but even before that is how are we onboarding our staff to do those things too.
Right.
And then and then policies will be developed as we go, but it fits kind of that whole outline of this is effective supervision for the state of Minnesota.
And I will echo, I do agree, I do not like that, even though I brought it up, the, context standard piece of it. So I'm happy to move away from that language. But to your all's point, what this big body of R&R work and the cutoff scores and the amount of people, like, it's still all like, what can we do? We still need more information on these other deliverables, is all I'm saying, to like inform us. So back to your definition of outline. That makes sense. I mean, if we are just talking about doing like that comprehensive outline, that just, because really then what it's saying is it's prioritizing everything else below, which we're already talking about doing. It's in what order are we going to think about when and how we're going to do the various things that you've all mentioned, right? So, I mean, maybe we're already saying that it's built into these things because we have some proposed deadlines and, the order in which we want to do it. Isn't that the comprehensive outline of prioritizing what we're doing for all these things?
Somewhat. I mean, I guess the question is, are there things that are not on our list that we do also think we need to get to as part of that body of creating standards for effective supervision?
Well, that's a good question.
I think about data. I think about how is data informing directors, supervisors, and quality assurance. Where's quality assurance and fidelity in that as well? And to support the effective model. I don't think we necessarily have that answer, but how are we using that within this outlining structure of effective supervision on this model but it's all kind of pieced together in all these 11 deliverables, more or less. But we haven't really said, what does quality assurance look like for supervision?
Although, doesn't that fall into the deliverable? We haven't defined it, I agree.
Yes.
I'm just saying, like, it will come, that's right, I guess I'm getting at is all the things below this are gonna inform that one in, like, so that I went back to kind of the order of the sequence. Won't us building those things out, show us what we're doing and the gaps, and then we can put together a comprehensive outline? That's what-
Correct.
that's all I
It's
was
just
trying
package.
to-
How do we package it?
Yeah.
How do we
Yeah.
package it well? So it's
Yep.
clear and that's the plan, more or less.
Okay.
So APPA sent out that report, I think it was last July, and kind of had this framework for probation departments. And so there's some stuff I think we could borrow and look at when we're talking about a framework. If some of you have seen that, you know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, I can maybe send it out to somebody to distribute.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, And the APPA, to kind of build off, what Kevin had shared, the APPA standards don't include recommendations around frequency of contacts, but it's more so around kind of the quality and content of the contact and the type of contacts and kind of standards around that. And they kind of left the frequency of contacts piece kind of open, because there isn't kind of a ton of research on like it should be this exact frequency versus this frequency. So they left that piece open.
Yeah, because it's about context and the client and meeting the needs as they evolve and such, so. Good points.
So our stab at who should help with this was the JRI Phase 2 work group. That might still make sense. I think we still, left unsaid at the end of this meeting will be to what extent can CSG continue to support our work, and we'll have to figure out if they're not able to do that, what we could do instead. So assuming that they're around, or assuming we find someone else to help lead the group, would JRI Phase 2 work group sound right to everybody?
Start, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I think we have done deliverable 1. Okay, this is a deep dive, folks. Like, we are here to, Okay, deliverable 2, the risk and needs assessment tools. So the first one on here is develop policy to require the use of pre-screeners or the LSCMI for post-conviction adults in felony, gross misdemeanor, or targeted misdemeanor sentences. So the commissioner agreed that we should develop that policy. That original recommendation was worked on by the Risk and Needs Assessment Working Group. So we'll put them back on here. Just discussion on this one.
I think from a MAC perspective, just overall, the LSCMI, this is one of our big agreements, so I just want to celebrate that
Yeah.
first of all, because I think that's been something statewide we really do already too. The action is there, I think is good. When it gets into the pre-screener, I think we had a little bit more discussion and I have some notes, so I don't know if you wanted to go through the rest of these or how do we want to handle
We'll
this?
just stick
Okay,
to the top one
Perfect.
first. and-
perfect. Let's start with the celebration.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that was huge. I agree. That's huge. So any discussion on that one or any concerns there? And does the risk and needs assessment working group sound like the right group? Okay. Hearing, I'm going to take silence as assent. Okay, number 2, study and make recommendations. So this is, it's out of order. So this is the one the commissioner added in, and study and make recommendations regarding formally integrating the Minnesota screening tool assessment, the MinStar 3.0, into initial assignment of supervision level and case planning for those subject to supervised release or intensive supervised release. Discussion on that one.
I'll jump in from a MAC perspective again. This is where we did have some discussion. We did agree the MinStar 3 initial consideration as it's a primary risk assessment tool for release. However, when we talked about, we had some discussion about how the full LSCMI would then supersede the risk assessment because that's a risk and needs tool. So we had a lot of discussion about that. It's not necessarily a case planning tool in the community. It's an excellent risk-based tool, but as soon as the person's released, at that point, once you start case planning, having something different, and again, how would that even fit with funding and those things? Because when you come out now, our funding is based on the risk in CSTS. And what would it be assigned, the MinStar risk then, or would it be assigned the LSCMI risk? So there was a lot of discussion around that, I guess. Not opposed to it, but not sure how that would necessarily work, especially, and how soon would an LSCMI need to be done, those kinds of things. Molly, did I speak to that?
Yeah, I think that was essentially the.
Yeah, and I think probably that gives that more towards a supervised release, because ISR, obviously, that's what places an individual on ISR, and I think we had robust discussions about how do we effectively complete case planning with an ISR where the MinStar doesn't give us what we need?
Right.
And so I think within that policy, we said the LSCMI is going to give us what we need, and the trailer tools based on the agency to utilize for further deeper dive into specific responsivity or offense specifically DB SO cases. So the policy is written that way, as the LSCMI is guiding us in the case planning process. But now with supervised release, yeah, I mean, that's, you know, is there a way, you know, does that include this risk needs work group and our planning performance unit to develop a matrix that leads together, or what does that look like, I guess, post release for case planning?
Having been on in the last, one of the last two meetings of the risk and needs group, one piece that was provided to us was a paper about risk levels and trying to weave them together across multiple assessments when they're all different and they all tell you different things. What I found really fascinating about the paper that was provided to us was that there was an example of basically defining the supervision level and describing what the what that looks like and how you work with the individual by supervision level. And so I was like fascinated with that and thinking like, I wonder if we could do something like that, and if that might bridge the gap in some way. Like if MinStar is saying high, okay, well, what does high supervision require, as opposed to being tied to that tool forever, right? Like it's more, it's recommended maybe we use it to help set a supervision level or something along those lines. So I thought there was like a lot that could be talked about here. And I do recognize that right now, DOC is not sending out anything else that would help with case planning. So we have a big hurdle to overcome there. And I think MRA is going to force some of that as well too. So hopefully that will move us in the right direction. But yeah, I agree that the big problem with that is it doesn't give us what we need for case planning. And I will say too, though, that we also have to consider the HRU, so our hearings and release unit is using that MinStar risk level in sort of their response matrix too. So they're looking at the MinStar level as opposed to any other level that comes in. So we have discussions that we need to have with HRU as well about how do we make this practice work for everyone that does supervised release supervision going forward.
Yeah, and I really appreciate, I mean, the language here too is to study it, right?
Right.
Is to take a deeper dive. So, to your point, back and forth, like you're right, Becky, like MidStart 3.0 and high risk or very high, you know, ISR. So nobody's again opposed to that. We can do all these things. It's the case planning. I think it's when it gets into what we know about dynamic risk factors and what can change and what can't change. And so I'd love this study, I guess, if anything else, to be that back and forth. So then what does it mean for supervised release, not to only use the MinStar back on like a restructure or a violation? So like, where is there this bridge, like you said, Kelly, around the dynamic factors of what's happening post-release? And how do we use multiple tools, just like any trailer tool or whatever else, because they are doing different things. And so again, it wasn't that it was like an anti like MinStar 3.0. It's what is the purpose of it, and is it being applied and used when it shouldn't be used in certain circumstances? And so, and like again, the LSCMI in a case planning sense, the R&R sense trumps any, like we wouldn't be using the MinStar 3, and we all know that. So it is just when we think about this ask, I think the studying it makes sense that we can come back and make like better recommendations back to the commissioner so that we can do this well for the sake of our clients and ourselves, I guess.
I agree. And I think the other caveat too is the self-reported assessment summary report. That's going to also provide a multitude of other dynamic factors, some static, obviously with the ACE. But, you know, is that something to consider as well post-release as far as some of those from a case planning perspective? Because that's what's being used within the facility for case planning. how can that transition out and other ways of assessing those dynamic factors post-release.
So would this be like a risk and needs assessment working group thing, or would it be a more specialized place for that?
I don't know. This is Jen. I feel like in some ways, it kind of weaves in with the case planning work more specifically, just because of like the case planning transition piece, because it's not really about kind of validation or implementation of kind of the MinStar, but how are you using and interpreting the results in terms of supervision and case planning. And I know Erin usually leads on those groups, so I don't know kind of where things are in terms of those groups, and which one would be the best to slot into, but it feels very like kind of case planning supervision level focus, but that's just my initial gut reaction. So
I appreciate that. And the hard part about this is how all these things are not mutually exclusive, right? Because there's also a part of me that thinks the people working on pre-screener and like those trailer tools too, right? Because it's like, how, again, it's really how do all of these supplement each other and give us information in order, but to your point, to do case planning. So if that's it, that also makes sense to me as well. It's just a matter of there's overlap too.
100% agree.
I mean, really, where is it that, because of the validation of LSCMI and some of that too, so this matrix, right? Like, how do you, because it really is, if the MinStar is this and the LSCMI is this, or once you do, like, right, all these, if that, I guess it is case planning. Sorry, I have to do that out loud in my head. I'm like, wait a minute, what?
I think similar to like how we use the static and stable. Your
Yeah,
static, this,
yeah,
stable that, and use this
exactly.
matrix, and you fall in the higher, medium, or lower category.
Yeah.
So something.
It is how you're applying the information you're receiving into the case plan. Okay, I'm there.
Okay, so I put like the three things we talked about: risk and needs, case planning, specialized group, and I think that we'll have to, I don't think we landed necessarily, but those are the ideas.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on that one before we move on? Shelby, is it possible?
Yeah, I'm back here.
Is it possible, like, we can only see one person at a time on the top there?
Oh, yeah,
Is it
I can
possible
change
to
that.
do that differently? Thank you.
It's just hard when you're sharing your screen.
Oh, yeah.
Let me see what I can do.
Okay, thanks. Okay, third one on here, 2C, provide additional recommendations to clarify appropriate supervision standards for misdemeanor cases that will not be screened or assessed with the LSCMI to ensure statewide consistency in practice and alignment with evidence-based practices. So basically, if you recall, number 2A says this is when we will use a screener or the LSCMI. It's not all cases, so there's some cases that don't have any type of assessment up front. So this is so the commissioner is asking for, so then what are the supervision standards for those cases where there's no assessment done up front? So discussion on this one.
Is this the I just want to make sure that I'm tracking. Is this the requirement that folks were like referring to where they were like, I'm not they disagree with the commissioner like wanting to have oversight on some of the probation cases? Is this the one that you're
that's further,
referencing?
yeah, that's further down.
Okay.
I mean, does this belong in what we were talking about earlier, which is that outline, like all of the things that eventually we have to say, this is a gap in, you know, the deliverables down below? Because if they're not getting a screener for certain misdemeanors, what are we doing? So I understand the question and I'm not opposed to like talking about it or whatever the answer is, if it's like, you just have to explain in your comp plan what you do. Because we all have most of us, think I can speak, have policies around what we do in these cases. So a practice is already going on. So is it, again, these are kind of married together and we just keep that in mind in this overall outline of, yes, we need to talk about that and we're not quite ready yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would show up in the outline for sure.
Yeah.
As it's been one of the things that we would work on.
Right.
Yeah.
So we don't have all the answers right now on this one, but like duly noted, basically.
Yeah,
Mhm.
duly noted.
Like
Just leave
that.
that like that. Yeah, we're not in disagreement, it's just future, and we can't write it down right now. I like that.
And won't this come after the fact, once we've identified which cases we're gonna screen and which ones we're gonna case plan? Then it would be those that fall below, and make recommendations. So I think this one is kind of after we've identified first which ones we're gonna screen, correct?
Yeah, and we did do that, Tracy, so the 2A the policy that we're working towards is that you would use a pre-screener or the LSCMI for
Yeah.
all felony, gross misdemeanors, or targeted misdemeanors. So this is like everything else.
Or DA or traffic folks.
Does that make sense?
That makes very good sense. Thank you for clarification.
But you're absolutely right that it will, there's a lot of other steps that we also have to work on that would not apply to these cases. So should I leave the work group blank for that one now, or should I be maybe taking it, or should I do a note? Well, actually, I could put a note in here too about incorporate into the outlining process.
There you go.
Yeah, better.
And then decide where it goes, Because that would be basically, we have a lot of steps to work through, so we wouldn't know at this stage who might be tackling that sort of thing. Okay. All right, 2D, continue work on identifying a statewide pre-screener for probation clients. This was being worked on by the Risk and Needs Assessment Work Group, and I know that they've continued those discussions. So we had filled that in the blank for the work group or committee. Any other discussion on this one?
So who is it outside the DOC that's working on the validation and that kind of thing, or is it DOC driven?
This is just the identifying a statewide.
Okay,
pre-screener-
okay.
Pre-screener. So it's not the validation.
Okay, got it. I'm jumping ahead.
Was that an ask within the validation to explore a pre-screener?
Yeah, one of the options was to ask that vendor if they could develop a pre-screener for us.
I just think in our discussion, this, we got hand up in pre-screener, or we can go through the work with the validation study, kind of an add-on, potential add-on.
Right, and there's, as Jen pointed out earlier today, there's a smaller group of researchers from different agencies. We're actually looking at the feasibility of creating a pre-screener in Minnesota, like in-house.
Yep.
So I know that group has met at least once, and that they would, I think that they're going to be bringing back recommendations to the Risk and Needs group.
I think that's the piece that I would add. Thanks for the question, Becky, that MACAC continues to want to support is that for sure the validation is external. Yes. Mostly we lean towards even the development being external. It is in conjunction, obviously, with experts in our state around data and the analysis and those sorts of things. So I understand because I have a staff on that subcommittee that there's different conversations going. So I just want to make sure, I think that's keeping an eye on that, I guess, on how, so that's a subcommittee of the risk assessment group, right? So then, and then it goes up to us, right? So it's like, is that how the structure works on that one?
It was well, Jen couldn't speak to it. It was an informal group pulled together just to determine feasibility.
Okay.
They were gonna bring information back to the risk and needs work group for that group to decide if it makes sense to try to move in that direction. And my understanding was if that is the direction that it moves, then a committee would have to be formed to work on that process, because right now it's just researchers talking, and so nobody else is there.
Got it.
So we would definitely want a broader representation of folks for that. That's what we had talked about in the risk and needs group last time when that was all set up.
Yep. You covered everything I would have covered, Kelly.
That was the meeting I was at, so I don't remember what was said that day. Okay. Anything else on the pre-screener? So for now, sounds like it's okay to leave it with risk and needs, and they'll be bringing information forward. Okay, next one is continued consideration and recommendations relating to other tools or supplemental assessments for special populations such as sex offenders, DWI cases, with corresponding recommendations regarding their initial and ongoing validation. So that was, we had asked to be able to continue to do that work. The risk and needs assessment group was the group that had it on their plate originally, and I know that they have had some additional discussions about that topic, even over the holidays. So open that one up for discussion.
Excellent. I think, again, this is one of those things that's really important to MAC Act when you have special populations, whether it's sex offense or domestic violence, to be able to use that appropriate tool. It's really important. I think across the state, again, this is another big agreement.
I think in our last conversation with this too, and looking at those trailer assessments, is that they provided a nice little list of all of the different types of tools out there that are rated from poor to excellent. And I think we kind of came to a consensus, like, why would we need to settle on a tool that's fair? We would settle on a tool that's either good or excellent. So I think that was kind of our conversation as we're moving ahead with further exploration of all the different trailer tools. That wasn't necessarily prescriptive of this is the tool you use, versus if you're going to use a tool, it should fall in the good or excellent category.
I appreciate that, Jake. I think if I'm remembering right too, I mean, fair is almost like slightly better than flipping a coin.
Correct.
We want better than that. You
So
know,
educate me here.
Yeah.
Ranked or rated by who? I mean, how is that determined? Is that
Boy, this
just?
is right up
that's
your
the
alley.
data?
Actually, Jen,
Oh, Jen,
Jennifer,
yeah.
Oh,
there you
I'm
go.
sorry.
Good question.
Yeah, it is a great question.
Yeah, and that is some of what the group is doing right now is kind of digging into the research on the different tools and the validation studies that have been done on those tools to see where they're falling. Because, typically with some of those trailer tools, it's not super common that there's local validation done on all of those, because it takes a really long time to gather enough cases with those often specific tools for kind of a really robust local validation. And so typically you go with the validations that were done when the tools were designed for those. So we're trying to pull together all of that information for the committee to take a look at. So then everybody can understand. We're adding in kind of what the cost, either upfront or ongoing training costs are with those tools. Because some are proprietary, some are not. So trying to gather all that information so then they can put that out to folks in the state so that they know which ones are solid, which ones are maybe less solid within the state, along with some guidance.
Thank you.
Any other input or feedback there? Okay, we'll move on to deliverable 3, assessment-driven collaborative case planning. So the first one here is develop policy requiring evidence-based case planning for high and moderate risk clients So it's just a reminder, we had recommended that the policy be developed to require case planning for high-risk clients. The commissioner has asked or wants the policy to include high and moderate risk, but giving a delayed effective date for moderate risk case planning. So the JRI Phase 2 work group is the one that had originally brought forward the case planning request. So we had placed it back with them to work on this one. So feedback on this or concerns or whatever.
I think, and I agree with this one. The only point, I know we've talked about this, is when we look at the moderates, that the deliverable on supervision standards might have to come first, because if we remember back when we started maybe working with CSG a few years ago, we did that. We had all agencies kind of report, hey, what's your high risk cutoff scores, what's your moderate, and everybody was, not everybody, but there was some differing things there. So I think we want to identify that first, which will come with the validation study, I think, as well, on what that looks like. But ensuring that that's done before we have that moderate risk piece put into there, so we're all working at the same level, if you want to say.
Oh, so you're saying, like, for instance, when we do the LCMI validation, one of the things we've asked for is cut points so that we're all at risk the same way. And so you'd want that to be defined first before we have to start case planning based on those levels.
I think so, because if we remember, like I said, and I know I've got that Excel spreadsheet somewhere, but we created one statewide, and I think most agencies had reported to it, and a moderate based on our cutoff scores of honor in Waseca County may be a low in let's say Itasca County or Wabasha. And I'm not saying that's the case, but I know everybody had a little bit different, like the bottoms and tops of their cutoff scores. So that could make a difference on this. So I think we want to ensure that we're all in the same, moderate is a moderate. If I'm a moderate in Waseca, I'm a moderate up in Itasca County, or I'm a moderate with the DOC. Just ensure we're all the same. So.
Thanks, John. I would say MAC's in alignment with that. And so I think that it feels too soon to put moderate in policy. We're wondering if, just like some of these other deliverables, if we start again with what we talked about with the high risk, and put as a deliverable with a subgroup that, yes, we understand that we want to look at moderate at some point in time. We don't want to write it into our proposed policy to start with. So that all of this other data coming forward, we can settle into doing that really well and have a placeholder for, just like we're talking about the outline or, other things that don't have set deadlines, that we still have it as, again, something that we need to address, but to memorialize that in a policy that you shall or whatever do this in 2 years without that data that you're talking about, John, feels too premature, because there's too many unanswered questions around that, including, again, workload study stuff, funding formula, et cetera. And do we have the capacity to do that going forward? But we don't know what that is, right? Based on everything, again, that John was just saying we talked about. So it's kind of saying the same thing as the commissioner, but just not putting it in policy, but putting it in our to-do list to address this and give an update in a year. That's fine, just like we do other things too. But I think in the meantime, then we're solidifying these other things really well.
I think the ask is providing a progress report. Where is this at? I don't think the question is do we or don't we, it's just when do we, from an implementation standpoint, we need some questions answered, kind of what John is saying in relation to cut points and capacity. Cut points and capacity. And what does that look like necessarily over the next year as we're implementing high risk case planning? Right. What is that, how are we evaluating our progress along that the moderate front, I guess.
Okay. Anything else? JRI JRI phase 2 work group still seem like the right group for that? Okay. Oh, actually, no, we didn't have a, oh, no, that's right, that's GRI. So then, yeah, 3B would be the submit a progress report within 1 year of full implementation of case planning policy, evaluating readiness to implement case planning for moderate risk clients and identifying gaps. So basically, to support number 1, this is just a separate ask. So we don't have a work group or committee identified because obviously CSAC would be the one submitting that progress report with information, but it's a ways down the road, so this, we don't know.
It's gonna pop up when
It's
we're
on our
checking
to-do
in,
list,
but
yeah.
Duly noted.
Duly noted.
Duly noted.
I'm gonna put that, I'm gonna make that one to drop down off.
Yeah,
Duly noted.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
All right. Any other discussion on 3B? Okay. 3C, develop policy in support of recommendations for an automated case plan template in the court services in CSTS. This one is, this one came forward from the JRI phase 2 working group, and so we put them back on the list as helping with that piece of it. What's the feedback on this? Does anyone have feedback on this one?
Just that this is heavily dependent on the update on what's gonna happen with the federal government, right? And our
Right.
timelines and everything else and ability to do that. MACAC would say, yeah, that's great. Like, let's enhance CSTS and be on the same page and use it. I mean, this is another celebration in my opinion and just trying to get that moving.
Yep. So funding is really the issue with this one. Okay. Okay, 3D is develop policy to formalize an evidence-based case planning process that aligns with the risk needs and responsivity model. This one was so this came forward from JRI phase 2. So they've been put back on the work group side of it. I just want to remind CSAC, this was actually a much more detailed recommendation coming forward from JRI phase 2, and this language is what CSAC changed it to. So, and I think in response to some of the discussion about what is the case planning process that's out there. So I'll just say that, and then feedback or comments on that one.
We do. I just keep pausing.
I know.
Kind of like before, it was like, I think that, thank you for the clarification, Kelly, because I think that would just be what we want to make sure. I think the word, the formalized is what is just, it causes pause for MACAC maybe to, if it's really within the spirit of what we talked about at CSAC, which is here are all the R&R principles or the buckets of things we want to make sure jurisdictions are doing. That's great, but it's not aligned with any like particular curricula, that there's flexibility in that as long as we're all doing that work within those buckets. And so that's, I think it's that word formalized, but if we're still saying the same thing, then I think we're in alignment.
It's evidence-based R&R. It doesn't have to, yes, flexibility, as long as it's that.
The one thing that is really jumping out at me though is, both A and D are about a case planning policy. To me, it feels like there'd be one policy that would have, all of this stuff in there. So whatever we're gonna say about case planning is, it's either in one policy or it's in part of another policy that relates to R&R. I'm not sure exactly how we end up doing it, but,
Yeah, to me, it just seems like develop policy requiring formalized evidence-based case planning process R&R for high and moderate risk clients. I mean, I don't know why we just don't combine the D together and just kind of weave this. It's the same. It's using the term formalized and align it with R&R. Well, I wouldn't expect a case planning process that doesn't align with R&R. So I don't know if we just combine A and D together. But with Becky and Molly are, obviously there's different types of curricula out there that we see. A case planning process in and of itself is probably somewhat formalized, but what elements of the case planning process are utilized, like 10 steps risk reduction, or, we develop more of a kind of a roadmap. Our practice model incorporates the case planning process, but it's our practice model that we put together. Other folks have that opportunity to put their own practice model together and how they implement case planning, approaches training, etc.
You said that very well, Jake. I think we can get there with the high level guiding principles around what's in a practice model and how to get to case planning, and we'll use CSTS. But if somebody does want to use the Carry Guide one, or their internal homegrown one, or the state developed one that's really around those different appointments or whatever, it's fine. Like, that's where the flexibility lies. And so it's trying to, so I think we're saying the same thing there.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, in C, the intent of within the automated case plan template allows the customizable options for each agency to put what they need to put in there.
Yeah, customizable. I like that word. That's kind of within that.
Trademark it.
Yes.
A little twist on the flexibility.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I was trying to get at.
I was gonna say dealer's choice.
When I think about this too, it's because we just recently, were looking at, I've been working on MRA policies, and we kind of have the same thing there where we require case planning, and at one point, because there's like 700 edits, and I'm talking about even the one that set the policy for the facilities as well. There's 700 edits and things get lost along the way. And I remember at one point going, wait, like, why are we doing this case planning? Like, what's the goal? And I'm like, it has to say that we're doing this to target criminogenic needs, or why are we doing it? It's not an R&R model if we're not doing that. So I could see like a policy saying, putting that principle out there, like the purpose of the case plan is to develop interventions that target criminogenic needs, or to identify interventions that target criminogenic needs. That's the kind of thing that aligns with R&R, but maybe the exact how you do it, you don't have to get to that level of policy.
Exactly. The model you use is the model you use, but it's addressing those factors.
Your model has to include this, and so that was really well said.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I was just gonna say that. Okay. It's so funny. So that, but let's see, where are we? We have one. Should we do 3E and then, or should we?
Oh, that's fine if you want to.
Oh, yeah, finish it, yeah.
Let's do 3E and then we'll take a little bit of a break here. Okay, so 3E is prioritize the development of metrics to assess fidelity and associated outcomes of case planning. Minimally include indicators of case plan development, client engagement, and case planning, assessment of progress towards criminogenic goals and recidivism outcomes. Feedback on that one?
Okay.
Okay.
The question I have here is, it has JRI phase 2 work group. This is one where I see that CSTS data outcomes overlap, and like in working that in conjunction with, right? Because it's developing, and then it's like, what can we measure? And then if we can't measure it, is it part of the whole build out, depending on, so it was about I don't know about the timeline, and making sure, I guess, that it's not just JRI phase 2, that I think we need some other folks as a.
Is that like an appropriate representation? CSTS data outcomes?
That's what they're called, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Committee? Okay.
People will know what that is.
Okay. Yeah, I had the same question, like maybe that needs to be something they take the lead on, or is it, we're working together with them? I'm not sure.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Good point.
Yeah, because I think like the development of a case plan, indicators of case plan development, I think that wouldn't be the data. I mean, that's probably where each agency is at, but it's kind of incumbent on CSTS build out too as well. So with developing the process within CSTS, then it's the developing process within the agency of implementation of case planning. So I think there's, yeah, there definitely, kind of the rest of them seem to kind of point the direction of CSTS data committee.
Yeah, they're married, right?
They're
Like,
married,
like
absolutely.
the client engagement, yeah, okay, we know what that means, but then how do you, if you are gonna create a metric around that, you need the evaluators and the data people in the room to be like, we know what that means just from a like individual basis, but if I have to report that out somehow, right, I mean, how do I do that? And I think that's why I said it's a merit.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing for now and let's take a break. Would, coming back at 11:10 make sense?
Perfect.
Okay, let's do that.
Thank you.
See y'all at 11:10.
And I'm just gonna keep it recording and use my room for a minute.
Okay, thanks. Oh, is it time already? All right, folks, we're gonna get started. Just give a sec for people to come back. Everybody with us? All right, thanks, guys. As what I'm sharing, I cannot see chat or hands or anything like that. So just a reminder, you can just speak out if you have something to say. Hopefully others who can see that can see chat. If I'm ignoring something, please feel free to yell out that somebody's put something there that I should pay attention to. And I appreciate that. So we will keep going with this exciting task of reviewing everything, deep dive. I'm gonna share my screen again. Okay, so deliverable number 4. So I just wanted to say that this worksheet includes the stuff that we didn't get to last year, as well as the things that we were adding in from the commissioner's response. So one of the items that was in statute was limiting standard conditions required for all individuals on supervision across all supervision systems and judicial districts, ensuring that conditions of supervision are directly related to the offense of the individual on supervision, and tailoring special conditions to individuals on supervision identified as high risk and high need. So that was on our list for last year. We did not have time or capacity to work on that last year. As a result, we haven't put in a potential work group or committee to work on that here. So I'll just throw it out there for what are people's thoughts and feedback on this for this year. Are you going to do this one single-handedly?
If what, no?
Kurt?
Well, in terms of standard conditions, give me an example that would be implemented on any case, just because it's required, that may not be appropriate.
Law abiding.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. So I think we talked about this where we had 2 separate instances where there was a judicial work group, I'm trying to keep my voice over here, judicial work group that reviewed the standard conditions and established kind of the set standard conditions for the bench. Then we had in 2018, I think that was the Mincer grant, addressed it for supervised release. So looked at we had probably 13 or 14 at the time. I think it's down to maybe 5 or 6. Yes.
So would abstaining in a case that had nothing to do with drug or alcohol be another example?
That would be a special condition.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be a standard condition. I think that historically was for supervised release was a standard condition when you abstain. But they said, no, it needs to be connected and tied to their behavior.
Yeah.
So
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I think it was also tied around the way it was worded. So that we would say, don't use drugs. And then the next time it would say, don't abstain from all mood altering chemicals. And I think there was a lot of work on that. I feel like this isn't a high priority. I feel like this other work should be our focus. That's my thought.
Okay.
I mean, is this something to evaluate at some point? Is what was done over these last 6+ years still equitable? I mean, is it still, I don't know what that, this is something we just explore down the road.
Duly noted.
Duly noted. There it is. It fits.
I haven't used that phrase in my notes, but I'll add that.
Okay. Figured that one would be fast. And I just have to get it so you can see the screen again. Okay, there we go. Let's see. Number 5, gender responsive, culturally appropriate, and trauma-informed services. Work with the evidence-based practices statewide advisory committee to develop comprehensive and actionable set of recommendations regarding gender responsive, culturally appropriate, and trauma-informed services. So the EVP advisory committee had been asked to originally work on this one, so we put them back in there again. Sorry, I'm messing with the view too much here. So comments on this one?
So I'm on that committee. I'm the chair of the committee. So I don't know if we put a realistic time frame in there. We put July 1st, and maybe that we were thinking like because we put the recommendations back in November. But I think if we change our meeting schedule to monthly, and Jake's on that committee as well, I think we can get the work done. But we'll, I don't know, maybe need some grace period possibly, but I think our goal is to have it recommendations by July 1st.
Yeah, I agree with that, Kevin. I think, yeah, we might have to look at our meeting structure and timeline, and do what we can, to get, and again, it's just recommendations more or less, not implementation plan or fully implemented by July 1st. And so we could probably see what we can develop, given the feedback we received in December, what that looks like. So, yeah, I'm with you.
All right, any other comments there? Okay, deliverable 6, statewide incentives and sanctions grid. So the deliverable here is finalize a comprehensive statewide behavior response grid. Look, the language is already changed. Statewide behavior response grid that is viable and effective for all supervision entities with the following considerations: collaboration with stakeholders, practical implementation strategies, and alignment with best practices. And the JRI Phase 2 work group had originally been working on this, and I believe still has been talking about it. So they were the group that was listed here. Comments?
We really like the language. I appreciate that. I really like that it's, let's just move forward with the language change to the behavior response. The time, and then the MRRA is, I think, the questions that we had, how that aligns, and that's where some unknowns for me personally is just to make sure that there can be some local modifications if need be, and especially the rollout with MRRA, I think is I don't know what it's going to look like completely. I don't think anyone totally does yet. I wouldn't want to get separate from that.
Yeah, and I think SEPRA was able to connect with Marisa, Kate, and Carly to make sure that you're not two separate paths with where MRRA is going with the same plan. So I haven't heard any update as far as if they've had meetings specifically with them in planning.
Yeah, one of the sort of weird parts about this is that there was a work group, an MRA work group that was originally working on this topic, and that group has since been disbanded because they got past like the stuff that they were supposed to be working on. And for this one, they just said, all right, we're going to work on the facilities side of it, and then you know, let things play out on the community supervision side, because we don't want to we want to encourage these incentives, but we don't want to like make those decisions, right? So but that all hadn't happened. But when we were making our recommendations, so we had said we need to collaborate. So I'm not sure. So I think we're trying to figure out like which group of the existing MRA groups would be the one to connect in with, and I think it's the implementation team for the supervision abatement policy. But I think Marla, Carly, and Marisa are still trying to figure that out. Like, who's the right connection point?
So in some ways, it's parallel and mirrors like the MRA, I mean, the MinStart 3.0. Like, how are all these things when they're like connecting all these, you know, the person and traveling through certain spaces. So response group being another one. There might be, like, I know in Scott County, we have different grids for, like, this is where the modifications or the flexibility for like, sex offender grid or, you know, like, what does that look like? But having that agreement on how to look guiding principles on what should be in one, kind of like case plan or anything else, makes sense to have lot of acronyms I just said in one sentence. And when I noticed that, so anybody, again, out there that is not in our field, that's like, what did you just say? Please, by all means, I'm happy to, or any of us to repeat or explain.
And this is Jen. I know I'm not as familiar as Erin is with all the data systems and things like that. Is the behavior response grid something that's going to go into CSTS? I didn't know if there was like a data group overlap that the behavior response matrix needed to have if it's going to live in a data system somewhere.
Yeah, so it does exist in CSTS now. With that said, there are enhancements and things, I think, to that again, being a county that uses it, that we would like to see, that I think would benefit everybody in the state. So this might be another one where we document in the groups that are working on it that, I don't know if it's that, we can just put CSTS data committee and maybe it's another, there are several subgroups in the CSTS world, so I'm not, they can help us define who that group of people is to make sure, I guess, that we have folks, the technical folks related to CSTS involved in that conversation too.
Yeah, I'd probably just say CSTS exactly.
Or that's fine too, they can assign it.
Because, and then they can assign, is it standards, enhancements, and then data committee is gonna have what data information needs to be drawn out of there. Yeah, so I think exec would be probably that.
Great. Anything else? Okay, we're gonna move on to number 7. Oh, there's really nothing to do with 7. I'll just point out. Okay, the way that we've listed it here is that there is an ongoing role for CSAC to refine and define supervision metrics needed to understand what is working and where improvements are needed across the system. So that was just an acknowledgement by the commissioner that we have that role. Back on the other page with the comparison, like deliverable 7 was about those specific metrics that were listed in statute and what could we do to get that reporting going? And I think I reported back last year that we are working to try to consume or change the data that is loaded up to DOC from CSTS so that we get the violations data as well. And that was a lot of missing data from the legislature asked for. So we don't currently have access to that statewide, and we're working to try to change our uploads so that we do have access to that. So, any other comments here? Deliverable 8. 8A, develop policy to support the recommendation that all Minnesota community supervision agencies provide training, coaching, and quality assurance review in the 5 identified skill areas. And we identified those as motivational interviewing, core correctional skills, the use of risk and needs assessment tools, cognitive behavioral interventions, and case planning process. This was brought forward from the EVP Advisory Committee, so we had put them down as the work group or committee that could help work on development of policy in this area. Feedback on this one?
So this came from, as you said, the EBP Advisory Committee. We had a subcommittee primarily working on it, and they did a very well-written, detailed report. So a lot of that information is in there. So I think this is going to be more of a lighter lift for us as well. And Jake, if you want to comment or.
Yeah, I think this, bringing us back as far as policy development within the advisory, I think that's where it belongs. As far as what as we're talking about where we go with it now. But I don't have additional feedback necessarily.
I think from MACAC, we would just say, again, it's what we've been talking about, the difference between what's in the policy and then what's in that document as your guiding principles or procedures and separating the two. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what comes out of that group. I think there's a lot of good work in that report.
Any other discussion? Okay. 8B, develop policy supporting all supervision entities, provide initial base level training for new supervision agents within the first year of employment and ongoing annual training of at least 16 hours for all staff. That came forward as well from EVP Advisory Committee. So they've been listed here. Any feedback on this one?
I think this would just be, for smaller jurisdictions that don't have, like, especially the ongoing training. Is there ability for, like, is it out there, right? Because not all small shops could provide their own 16 hours of ongoing. Like, we know we have the initial academy for the initial stuff, so that's not, I'm talking about the other stuff. There's no opposition to, like, that's good practice, and we should be doing that, and making sure everybody has access to it.
So there's a million webinars, you know, we're not overly prescriptive, it has to be in person, or it has to be this, or I think it's the ongoing skill development around MI, around all of those components. But I think there's a lot of virtual opportunities, and so I think you know, in the realm of like the EVP Cafe, they provide a lot of resources and areas that folks can go and find those resources. So I think as long as we talk about flexibility and not overly prescribing what that training is specifically, it has to be this or in this particular in person. But I think from a perspective of the 16 hours and how that supports the skill development.
That's great. I think we'll have to look at what the original proposal was there, because it was my understanding that some of that training included like maybe coaching as well, engaging in coaching. And so those are the types of things that as we get into implementation, I think we're going to have to talk about sharing resources across agencies, because I think that's where the smaller agencies may not have the capacity on their own to create like a coaching circle or something like that. So maybe that's something that they could join with another agency to do, or sharing loans or something.
Yeah, this is Jen. Just kind of random aside, if you want some different peer connections. I worked in Ohio prior to coming to the Justice Center, and they put out statewide training requirements to agencies, which in Ohio is actually 24 hours of changing, they call it changing offender behavior related trainings, you know, so anything related to EBP, risk and need assessments, cognitive behavioral interventions. And so when they put out that requirement, they changed up like all of the state conferences, you know, any workshops that are, you know, changing behavior related, they, you know, flag those to qualify for those requirements. And then agencies who had more capacity that do ongoing trainings throughout the year, you know, typically open those up to other agencies across the state to attend, to be able to help them get those behavior change credits for their training requirements. So they did kind of a multitude of different things, but, you know, really looked at identifying the changing behavior trainings versus just regular trainings, you know, and then to certify if you attended those qualified in terms of audit standards and things like that for the state, that staff were getting the required trainings.
I really like that. I get a lot of questions. Will this count? Will this count towards that? Especially if there's obvious ones, and then there's ones that, yes, do qualify, like coaching and different things like that. And then, so some of fall in that gray area. So I think that's helpful when we can give that guidance. And we all have, you know, some of our conferences and different things. to identify some of those. And then there's some trainings that aren't around that focus towards client change that are still important, but not what I think the intention is here. So thank you for bringing that up. That's
We spend a lot of time discussing, is this evidence-based? Well, it's responsivity, so it is, or no, it is. I mean, we really do spend a lot of time discussing that. I think that would be helpful.
It's definitely those areas that like feel so straightforward, and then when you get into like the weeds and the nitty-gritty questions, you're like, I don't know where that falls, and it gets much more complex quickly.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, no, those are all good things. And I think that as that policy is developed, those are some of the conversations too that can happen, and implementation is the other side of it too. Okay, so we're getting to the end, folks. Believe it or not, deliverable 9, evaluation methods. Oh, this one's interesting. We have nothing to do here. So this was in the statute, develop methods to evaluate outcomes for services provided by grant recipients under the statute that's shown there. There were no funds put in that thing.
No money.
There's no money, so there's nothing to grant. If there ever is money, then we should do this.
Yeah, duly noted.
Yeah,
Again,
duly
I
noted.
love it. No money.
Yeah. So number 10, we'll move on to number 10. 10 is devise a plan to eliminate the financial penalty incurred by a jurisdiction that successfully discharges an individual from supervision before the supervision term concludes. We had rolled that into our workload study process last time. So I don't think there's much for us to do until that comes back. And then 11B, select a vendor to conduct the workload study, ensuring the select vendor aligns with the goals and objectives outlined in the RFP request for proposal. And as we heard from our committee today, they're in the process of doing that.
In progress.
And this one? Sorry, I don't have 11B on here.
Oh, expanding our.
But this is
CSAC
just where there was
membership.
that, somebody mentioned it before. This was the expanding CSAC membership, the budget, and then the
Oh,
collaborative decision-making piece.
I'm sorry. Oh, it's because it's not our work to do. That's why it's not on here. So I'll go back to this one over here.
Just in case, I don't know if anybody has that comment. but-
So yeah, we can definitely talk more about 11A. So we had recommended expansion and revision of CSAC membership. So that's the first one. The commissioner thought that was a great idea. And it's my understanding that that we were able to move forward language to the legislature to request that change in membership. Now, the legislature decides to actually convene, then maybe there'll be a hearing on it, but that's not something we can control. So that's the first one. So let me just go through them all quick, and then I'll ask for feedback on all of them. On the budget expansion, again, that would require a legislative change. So all of the recommendations from CSAC were forwarded to the legislature with the report. So that's not something that the commissioner had any power to do anything about. And then collaborative decision-making and oversight shifts. And again, the commissioner just expressed his disagreement, but did say that all of the recommendations that this group had made were sent to the legislature when both the report and the response were sent to the legislature. So feedback on those things.
I brought it up, Kevin, you had commented that your small group had made a comment, so maybe that's all you needed to say, but I didn't want to miss if there was a deeper dive that anybody wanted to have on that, so.
Nothing? Or does anyone want to say anything more on that?
Well, I can understand the statutory responsibility requirements with the commissioner and essentially the inability to delegate that which is statutorily required. I get that. So, it's just an observation.
All right. Well, if that's it, I think we made it to the end of that part. What we had envisioned doing next, since you've been inundated with a fire hose of information, and I think we have time to do it, is to quickly do one more breakout to ask folks on CSAC to talk about, of all these things that we've talked about today, what's really rising to the top for you as the one or two most important things that we need to be working on. Yeah, which things seem to be the highest priority? And are there any non-negotiables, meaning that we have to do it whether we want to or not? Maybe there are other interdependencies or, given sort of all the other stuff that's going on, maybe MRA or whatever that's out there, like even if this might not be our top priority, that we have to do this one. So that's what we were hoping that we could talk about in the breakout sessions. Did you want to say anything else?
Nope, sorry, you're good.
Shelby, do you think you can do it?
Yeah, I started now.
Thank you.
Yeah. Jennifer, did you get a pop-up for your breakout room by chance?
I did not.
All right, she's gonna send you.
No problem. Oh, there it goes.
All right. Sure. Perfect, and send her off. All right, so what do you think? Outside perspective.
Yeah.
so-
That's where I probably look to you with more, obviously, more day-to-day involvement and how it impacts what you do for guidance in response to priorities. Recognizing the larger goal here, but how do we accomplish that in terms of priorities? I'm looking for input.
And because she had to log off, Barb Weckman Brecky texted me that she thought that let's see here, the case planning, the moderate to high risk, the making sure that we have like the funding and then the use of additional resources is a priority and what she wanted to convey before she had to log off. So I just wanted to get that out there.
So adequate funding before moderate risk is addressed.
Which I agree. I think we do agree on that.
Yeah, and I guess it's recognized that that's on a continuum of a goal as we move forward.
It's hard for me because, it's hard to think about like the piecemeal nature of the way we're working through some of the standards because the reality is that in order to take on more work, we probably have to leave from somewhere else, and so in some level, it's like if we had a better understanding of all the cases and what we're doing with them, then it'd be easier to make those kinds of decisions, right? To be like, hey, like as we're talking about it, like if this is how we're deciding where we can do resources, we have this group over here. I don't, it's like I don't know that we're gonna get more resources, but we're gonna get more money, especially with the funding situation being what it is now. But understand that like being able to prioritize based on risk and needs we might be that we might have to use that to give ourselves the space to prioritize too.
So does that translate to that first deliverable is develop a comprehensive outline and work on what is that? Because you're gonna have the gaps. We talked about some of the gaps and pieces there that we can plug those in. But when we have it in front of you, does that give us a better sense of what is the overall big picture of all the things we're doing as it's put together, and structured together? Because we have, like the policy development, we've got timelines on all that, we need to this policy. Those could happen, those we've seen will happen. Is that first of the goal? I mean, that kind of
I will admit that that is how I see things. It's funny because we didn't talk about it.
You didn't plan that?
No, we came up
That's
with
good.
that. We came up with that. But that is like when that piece of the commissioner's response, that's what it triggered for me. It's like, oh yeah, if we all understand where we're going,
Roadmap.
yeah, then it will be easier to get there and we'll all have a better, like, it's not just this thing is big, it's this is where we're going and this is what we have to do for this
Today.
part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, just
No. So I think that, again, I'm just trying to take all the voices in our space, right? I think so then is it a roadmap, not policy?
Yes.
That's great,
it.
right?
That's
So
what I
that
see.
would be,
framework.
Yes.
yep,
yes.
Yes.
where do we want to get to? But it's not saying shall do this. That's the piece where I think
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
makes sense to me, right? Yeah,
There's policies that are gonna weave into each step of the roadmap likely.
correct.
But what those policies are still, some we have determined. But there's gonna be what other policies need to be developed along the way in that road.
And then as we're balancing out, like, okay, so then we do this, so let's say just for the sake of argument, we have this 10 steps or 10 pieces we outline. You know, in 2, 4, and 6, okay, we got policies, right? Like we're doing these things as we're going through. We're gonna identify, okay, we're again, the gaps were whatever aren't yet developed. Okay, so we still need to go somewhere in that. At the same time, running parallels like workload studies and all this kind of stuff to also say, but this is what it costs to do this thing on the roadmap. And then also here's where there's gaps to be able to do that, because we can all agree, most of us, I think, could all agree on what utopian best practices is for all of our people.
Yes.
Funding's on an object, here's all the money on the planet
Yep.
and do good work. I think all of us could get behind and come up with this roadmap of like what that looks like, because we have it. I mean, there's so many pieces that exist, right? Without naming out maybe particular curricula, but so, right, it's like that, it's like, and then you're overlaying some of that on top of each other, going, okay, well, we can't get there, we can't get to this utopian sort of space, but we can get this here for now. And then this is what it would take to get to the next, you know, all the while looking at that like visioning piece as we move forward, right? And I think it's the intersection of those. I think people are always afraid of, we want you to do this, we're only gonna give you this, good luck, right? And then how do
Yes.
you like manage that? So.
And then publicly, how does that look? Like, oh, you're only at a C- and you're not at the A+, but I'm at a B+, you know, and so I think that's the fear, and what keeps coming in my head is my colleagues back in Stearns County that are in social services. They have such weird things that they have to do that don't benefit the client, but that's how they get the money. You gotta punch in this number, and then you gotta stand on your head. And it's just old school things that back they were meant well, made sense at the time. I love that this is a living document, a living process, that we're not tied to, you know, you have to case plan and take a picture and do all these things to prove you did it. I don't know how to make that, if I'm making sense at all. I just don't want to get us tied into where we're doing steps that we don't need to do, that aren't helping client change. So I think we're on the right track. I just get that fear every once in a while when I see some of the things that they do, and I'm like, well, that's
Yeah.
too bad you're spending 5% of your time. You could be doing something more client focused.
And did they have a, right, I mean, I think that's what, that came up several times.
Yeah.
We don't want to be in a situation like we have in DHS, sorry.
DHS. I don't
Right,
know.
where we have $200 million in lost like
Right.
money, or, you know, with all, because somewhere along the line, 20 years ago, people were sitting around a table like this.
Yes.
Saying, you need to do
Yes.
all these things, and SSIS is a beautiful tool like CSTS
meant
case
well.
planning, and it was really good at the time. Fast forward, and we're in a mess of like, we don't want to get there. So how do we structure what we're doing that accomplishes what we're trying to do, but don't set us up 20 years later for being, you know, like in a similar situation, right?
Thank you for saying that better.
No, I was just like trying to. I don't think anybody would disagree with that, but I think that's the tricky part. about
Over
all
time,
this.
it can move to form over substance and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and well, I think that, like, we had the recommendation for case planning, and then the next one was like, and do some key metrics, right?
Right.
So like, if you can build some stuff that's easy to pull into CSTS to show whether people should have a case, who are high risk, have a case plan,
Yes.
then you know if you're doing it, so that gives the manager a tool, and as a state, we know whether it's happening or not. That doesn't mean you have to go crazy with like forms and all that stuff.
I think as we talked about, even on the EVP advisory and implementation, so it's not, like I said, C minus. That's not necessarily tied to funding, but it's tied to how to support others in their implementation plan and ability to meet those metrics or meet those. We haven't really set, this is the bar for the number of case plans we want to see that's coming. I mean, I'm sure it will come at some point. 51% means full implementation. It's going to take time. You and I spoke about that. It's going to take a couple of years for us to really, truly, one, get everybody on board, following the same map, and getting to full implementation. It's not going to happen overnight. So it's that we're doing it.
20 seconds.
And how does this framework support that? What policies along the way will help, that we need to build in to provide the ditches, more or less, flexibility,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all of those things, yeah.
Here's one of those courses that shows, like, the first thing I think about is teaching motivational interviewing to like benefit workers and people that have to do a plan within the first X amount of days, and that's fine. But then agents are like checking the box
Right,
to
I
meet the
don't want to do
need
that.
Right.
Thank you.
and losing the forest for the trees on doing the good work. So
Yes.
that's right, the balance we're always trying to like flex, so.
Yep, exactly.
All right, well, welcome back, everyone. How were your discussions? Do we want to, can we go in the same order as we did last time? Maybe group one, tell us a little bit about what you talked about.
I could go this time. We kind of were figuring out what's the cart and what's the horse in terms of how we have to go about doing things, getting that case planning figured out, getting the training figured out, all that stuff. And then something that I'm interested in once we build the plane that we're currently flying, is I would love to have points in there for victim input, just like we have through the MRA process now with those rehabilitation plans. So once we figure out all the steps, I'd love to see where are points in which we should be interacting with victims and asking for their input on programming and discharge, things like that.
Great, thank you.
You did spark something for me. We didn't talk about this, but and there's pieces of this, and client input into, like, in Scott, we're trying to do, whether it's surveys, and we also have like focus groups where we're bringing in people that are, having case plan, like what's working, what's not, like it's like, how are we doing some of this as we're rolling some of these things out on impacted folks? So yeah, victims included, but then also the people working the plans, right? And how do we build that into all of this as well?
All right, group two, what did you come up with?
And I can go again if we want, but so very similar. I mean, good conversations. We had a lot of it was, hey, there's a lot of good work being done already. We have a lot of committee work going on, so it was really harder to prioritize it. Just continue working as what we are, And then I think with our group talked a lot about, we'll have to be intentional about the implementation piece to it, because a lot of these overlap and kind of go together. So it's being intentional on how we implement them and what stages do we implement them at. But there's a lot of work going on already. So just kind of keep moving forward as we are and get some of this the policies drafted so we can start reviewing them. So.
All right, so I'm hearing a couple of things. I'm sort of hearing get the policies drafted, but then also be very intentional about all of the implementation that's going to follow. Okay.
I just will add one thing to that, and this is sort of, I wouldn't say self-serving, but from the evaluation standpoint, we talked also a little bit about making sure that talking about how, the process is going, but also like data collection and that kind of thing about how things are being operationalized. All that is at the forefront of conversations kind of ongoing, because knowing that implementing some of these things might be more difficult in practice than they are and like conceptually. So just being able to come back and look at data and look at things to see if it's working. It's really important that everyone's doing it in the same way. And we know that that's going to be really hard with so many different jurisdictions and systems involved. So if everyone's thinking about it, and talking about it and having it on agendas and that kind of stuff, then that might just make sure it doesn't get lost.
Great, good input.
What was that?
I love that.
You agree on that.
Too bad.
So our group really, what we really kicked off and kicked around was looking at that first deliverable, specifically an outline development of the standards, specifically the essential components of effective supervision. So it kind of developed into what is going to be the roadmap that we want to see ourselves following in relation to, we have, these 11 plus deliverables because we have sub deliverables. And talking about, where things about the funding come in, like gaps, what are some gaps we recognize within this roadmap? Where each policy is kind of plugging in along that way, because we already have kind of, we're going to be handing off these policy recommendations, drafting recommendations to these work groups with some timelines already established. So we know that, essentially that those wheels are going to be in motion or are in motion. So, with all of that, where along this, developing what this roadmap is for how we identify effective supervision. Knowing that there's these other, what we call them roads or these lanes along the way, like the LSCMI validation, where that kind of intersects within the road, specifically like we talked about earlier with the case planning process, with wherever, and then how about the workload study and the funding formula? Where does that intersect along the way for that may address a gap, or where we identify gaps where that we can say capacity and how it might impact that particular place on the roadmap. So I don't know, help me out.
Molly, you were very good at
Yeah.
explaining it. Maybe you could.
No, Jake, I appreciate that. Yeah, so the outline is the roadmap, as you said, and then running parallel is some of these other things, and I thought you were saying it just fine, but the workload study, and because it's like, then can we even afford to do it? And if we can't, then where do we have to dial it back? We can only get so far in this roadmap. And so all of these things are going to inform, right, how we are meeting what we all hope to have happen. I said, or all of us, I think, want our utopian EBP world of stuff out there. And Julie, with you saying what's practical though, right? In real life, what does that look like? How long does it take? How much does it cost? And so it's the marrying of those two concepts that we need to keep our eye on so that we're not setting ourselves up or we're bringing all of those conversations along the way. So I thought you were saying interesting.
Well, right. And I think I like analogies. So like, we might have a nice paved roadway, but it might turn to gravel because of some limitations because of some capacity issues, but we're not gonna be complacent and just say, we're good with gravel. You know, at some point, we want a fully paved highway of all of this, but knowing that it's not gonna be perfect.
It won't be low emissions, like, you know, and zero like gas cars on the road, for instance.
Correct.
I'm terrible with analogies, actually, so it's good that you are better at that, but yeah.
All right, any other feedback there, comments? All right,
I
we
think
made
too,
it. Yeah, go ahead.
there was recognition that, you know, this is a living, responsible final outcome. So that the work remains meaningful in terms of our goals and as opposed to the checking of the box.
Correct.
the work there. So,
Well
adding your
said.
comments.
Thank you.
Well, that
That's-
is really an important
That's true.
piece.
Implementation, yeah, I think that was about implementation and understanding and all that, yeah, so that's a great point.
All right, we made it. That was a deep, deep dive. Thank you, everyone, for doing that. I hope that that was really helpful. To me, it was really helpful to get all the ideas on the table, and I hope it was helpful to you to get an understanding of the work. We will have some work to try to put some of this in order. If CSG is with us, they're going to help us with that. If not, we'll muddle through on our own, maybe on the gravel road instead of the nice paved one. The last thing on our agenda today is committee vacancies. Number one, we've had a vacancy open for an individual with lived experience for one of the three supervision delivery systems for a while. We've actually recently had a few new applicants, and we've got members that are helping to get in touch with them. We also have one individual who has not been able to meet the committee attendance requirements. And so we're working with that individual to create a vacancy so that we'll actually be able to fill that position as well going forward. And that's also one of the individuals with lived experience. So hopefully through this process, we'll get all of those positions filled very shortly here. Is there anything else we need to talk about there?
And I just say, I would just support continued recruitment, and reach out to Don with any assistance or providing assistance with connecting on the Secretary of State site or myself with how to, if there's somebody interested on applying. So we walk through those steps.
All right. Any business that we didn't, we have like 2 minutes. Is there anything that we didn't cover today that we should have, that people want to make sure to put on our radar for at least the next meeting?
I can share, Erin had shared with me just a couple kind of super quick updates from the JRI phase 2. If that would be helpful, I'm happy to give those now.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I think kind of the big updates are that the Justice Center, we're providing support for the CSAC meetings and helping with, agendas and meeting facilitation moving forward through July. Our technical assistance runs through July on the project, so we'll be able to provide some meeting support through then, barring any changes with the federal government and their funding. But the big work in the phase 2 has been reviewing the CSAC recommendations and feedback from the commissioner and beginning to outline priorities for 2025. And we are working on the funding formula with the supervision forecast model and have some stuff mocked up to be able to kind of get feedback on that funding forecast model, as well as, continued guidance on the sub award as we get that with BJA. I think those were the main things that Erin flagged was happening.
All right, thank you very much. Anything else? All right, then with that, we have done more than enough work today. It is almost noon, and unless there's any objection, we can adjourn the meeting.
Great, thank you, everyone.
That's
Thank
good.
you.
Next
Thank you.
one.
Thank you, thank you.
Driving down, you two. Wait, do you drive?